All right. Good morning, guys. Can you hear me? All right, perfect. Okay, so let me share my screen and we will start. Okay, so today we're gonna cover a little bit more about locators, about how to locate elements. And specifically, we're gonna concentrate on the how to interact with multiple elements. Before today's session, we were talking about the individual elements. So we were told you need to find unique locator. So it should be like only one locator in the full page. Today we're gonna talk like how we can interact with like multiple elements with the same locator, or in other words, just to find elements when you're trying to locate like multiple elements using the same locator and using a list in WebDriver. All right, so yeah, as I told you, like sometimes you need to interact with multiple elements, and in case, let's say, if you're doing the login tests, when you entering email, entering password, clicking to the submit button, it's all fine. But sometimes you need to work with multiple elements, right? So, for example, if you'll go to the Google and you will start to search for something, you will see like 10 results on the page, right? And in this case, let's say you need to create a test case when you will need to assert that the size of the lists is equal to 10. And in this case, you can technically grab it one by one, creating like unique locators, but it's gonna be like not best practice because you will need to locate them by indexes, which is a very fragile approach. Or let's say in other examples, you may not know the exact size of the list, let's say if it's dynamically changing, and you need to grab the full list without knowing the size. And in this case, it's going to be like even more complicated. And in these cases, and in these test cases, we will need to use find elements to locate like multiple elements. All right, so let's actually move on here. Let me show you on the practice example. So let's go to the Quidos, to our application. Okay, one more time, Quidos test.tk. This is our test environment, and please make sure you are writing all your tests using the test Quidos.tk, and do not use like a Quidos production, because here we can create like as much like junk data as we can. In production, of course, it's not the best practice like to create like a testing data. And like in general, in a test automation, usually we don't test in production at all. All the testing that we're doing, it's in QA environment or staging environment, maybe dev environment, but not production, because it doesn't make sense to test in production, because if you are released to production, it's already too late, and your customers already see this like bugs or errors that you could have been missed. All right, so let's actually go to the offers, and the offers, this is a list of the all compliance offers that constructors can offer you as a service. And here, as you can see, it's a list, and it actually contains 10 different contractors offers, right? And I believe it's a 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, perfect. All right, let me actually share it with you in a Slack. List of offers. And here you can open it, and let's actually try to find locator here, because you guys already know how to find locators using a CSS or XPath. Few words about that. Now you have like two approaches, right? You can locate elements using CSS, and you can locate elements using XPath. So pretty much, as you probably noticed, they both doing the same thing. XPath is more powerful, it's like more complicated, but like in general, they both can do the same thing, right? And so you can like pick one of these. It's better to stick to one instead of like mixing. And in my experience, in the companies that I worked, we mostly used the CSS because it's more because it's like more simple, and it's not that complex, and it's more user friendly. All right, guys. So let's actually practice, and let's. So what I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to find locator for these offers, right? Like some unique locators is going to be applied for 10 of these cards, like offer cards, and I need to make sure it's only 10 elements are appear here. So, and you can also notice here, if you will inspect them, you see different classes here. So this one, because it's highlighted as a white, it says card shape normal, right? And this one, if I'm going to inspect it, it's going to say card shape green, right? Because it has a green color on it. And also we have a red ones. So let's inspect. And here we have a red shape as a red. So it's not, let's say if I'm gonna use the original white one, let me actually find it here. So it says it's a red, not, okay, let me do, okay, here we go. So if I'm gonna locate this element, so now you see it's only can found 4 elements, right? So because it's only locating the white cards here, but it doesn't locate the red ones and the green ones. Let me go back here. Let me scroll up here. Let me just go to the top. All right, guys. So what do you think? What kind of locator I can use here to locate 10 of these cards?
XPath, because we can put the position then.
So here's the thing. I don't need to locate only this one. I need to locate 10 of them. So I don't really need a position here. I just need to find unique locator, which will pick like 10 of them. So now it says 4, and I need to find 10 of them. Does it make sense, Natalia?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you guys think? Any ideas? Okay, let's actually take a look to what's in common for these 2 cards. So this is my like white card, and this is a green card, right? Like green shape, green. Let me actually grab that, and let me open the text editor. new document. Let me paste it here. Let me grab my white one, and let's also paste it here. Okay, formatting is a little weird. But for now, it's okay. Okay, I see, George, you provided a locator. We're gonna check it as well. But let's actually now, let's take a look to this one. So let me zoom it a little bit. So, so we have like these locators for cards, right? First one is for normal, for white one. Second one is for green. And third one is for red, right? What do you guys think? What's in common for these locators? What's the common part? Looking to these three locators. Card shape. Yeah, exactly. So pretty much this part is unique for three of them, right? And what we can do here, we can locate element not only by specific value, we can select it not only because of the comparing the full value, we can also use partial match, right? We can say, okay, if even like this part is matched, then I want to select it, right? And in this case, what we can do here, let me grab this one. So if I'm going to use it like that, it's not going to select anything, right? Because it's selecting, but it's not selecting locator because the search option here it's apply like for all elements. And to be like more precise in terms of like CSS, we can say instead of like the shortcut, like a dot cut shape, we can say class equal to this value, right? And because it cannot find anything here, because there's like no value card shape, right? We can say, okay, I don't want to have like a full match, like 100% match of this value. I can just use a partial match. And here I can say, I can put star. If I'll put star here, I'm pretty much telling, hey, I want to grab a class which partially gonna be equal to the card shape, basically which contains card shape value here. And we can see it selected like 10 elements. So let's actually check if this is the right element. So this one is a white one, this is a green one, this is a white one again, red one, red one, red one, red one again, red one, green one, green one, and that's it. So now I can see I have like all of the cards are being selected. Let me copy that. Let me save. And now let's try your locators, guys, that you just posted. Let's try George, your solution here. All right, so now you see, yeah, I see it's your locator also located 10 elements, but it's like locating more the title, right? Title of the card. I mean, that's fine. If you're gonna assume like a card is gonna always have 10, always have a titles, which like makes sense. So this locator also gonna work. And let's actually put it here to my list. All right, so yeah, both of them should work technically. We can use like any of them. So good job, George. You pretty much find like as good locator as I did, because here we don't have like any. Okay, I don't want to close it. If you're gonna take a look here, we are not like we don't have like any unique IDs, or we don't have like any unique classes. So we pretty much need to find more kind of like little bit complex solution. And this is why we kind of like need to practice more in CSS and find unique locator, not just using the IDs or just unique class name or any other unique attributes, right? All right, so let's actually go back to our code here. And now let's actually, so here's the thing, guys. On last week, we only created one test page as an example, but because we wanna create a test case for offer lists, I would create another Java file, Java class, and I would name it as a like offer lists test, right? Because it's all of my tests for offer page is gonna be like a unique. It's gonna be contained on the unique class name. Okay, so offer lists tests. All right. Wait a second. So you guys probably cannot see my screen, right? What Zoom tells me. Let me reshare it. All right. Can you guys see my screen, and can you see my IntelliJ ID?
Yes, right now.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. All right, guys. Why do we need to create a different test class? It's pretty much the same as when you're creating a test cases manually. If you're creating a test cases for login page, you're trying to manage them, so they're all gonna be under the login test suite, right? If you're creating a test cases for sign up, you're gonna be like, you want to manage them and to contains only for a sign up folder, for example, right? So this is the same approach. You pretty much divide them by components, test cases, which one you want to like specifically write. And because it's offer list test, so this is why we're gonna create different test class here. All right, so let's actually create one test case using the list. So let's assume I want my first test case is gonna be once I open the search page, right? I want to make sure only 10 elements are appearing here, right? So I want just open the page, find this cards, and assert the size is going to be 10. All right, so how can we do that? First of all, we need to create a test annotation, right? So TestNG will identify this method as a test. And here we need to create our first test method. So we can name it as a public void and give it a name. So let's say like a test, or let's actually create a better name. Offer list size test, right? All right, so, and what we need to do here. So first of all, we need to open the browser, right? And to open the browser is gonna be the same thing. If we go here, we pretty much can just copy this part. So we're gonna initiate the browser, say it's gonna be Chrome driver, and then we're gonna open the page, right? All right, guys, and here's a question for you. It's more like manual testing question rather than automation. So I have like two approaches to go to the offers page, right? I can open the home page and I can click to the offers and I will be on the offers page, right? And or I can just open it by URL. I can pass the URL here and I'm gonna be on the offers page as well, right? So what do you guys think? What's gonna be the better approach in terms of automation? I mean, not only automation, but in terms from the manual testing. What do you guys think? What's going to be the better approach to open the offers page? Through the menu or directly? If you're going to write it down, please explain why do you think so? Okay, Dar, why do you think clicking from the menu is going to be better? You can unmute yourself and you can talk out loud, or you can just type. Okay, so either you think it's better because we are clicking to the menu, right? George, why do you think it's going to be better if you're going to open it directly? So you can also type it, or you can just unmute yourself and explain why do you think it's better. Guys, again, it's not automation testing question. It's more even for manual testing. Once you will write manual test cases, it's the same.
Do you hear me now? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you, George.
I had some problems with microphone. I think it's faster, and it requires less space in coding, which will make the coding look better, and it's at the same time faster, I think.
Okay, but okay, so you think it's a faster, and it's gonna be like it's gonna take less time, right? If you could just gonna open it directly, but why do you think it's not like what's the other reasons comes to your mind why we can just click to the offers? But because technically if we're talking about speed, I mean, yeah, it's gonna take like a few more seconds more, but because our web page is pretty fast and it's not gonna save much time. I mean, user flow, if you're going to talk about the user flow, pretty much users IDOP, the users are going to open the straight, right, this page. So they're probably going to open the main page and open the offers. Okay, Gary's question, it depends on the previous results, should be independent. Quick question here, each of your test case should be independent from each other. They should not depend on the results of the previous test cases. So this is going to be a strict rule, guys. Make each test case, make your test case individual. So they should not have any dependencies from other test cases. All right. So pretty much you're right, George. We need to open that directly from here. Why? Because even though users probably gonna open the main page first and click to the offers, but here, if we're clicking to the offers, we are pretty much testing this menu, right? So this is a component of the left side menu. And we're gonna have like a separate test cases, which gonna test only the menu bar here. And in this test case, we're gonna check like, okay, if I'm click to the offers, or if I click to the contractors or to the blocks, I open the specific page, right? But if we are testing the offers page, it doesn't really make sense to click here. Why? Because I mean, as George said, it's gonna be like faster and faster and more reliable, because let's say if your offer button is going to be failed, right? So this means if you're going to write your test cases for listing page, and you will have like 20 test cases only for listing page, all of them going to be broken, right? Because of this button is not working. It should not happen. Our test case should be individual. It's still gonna we're still gonna have like one test case which is gonna fail, which is gonna be related to this menu, and which gonna click to the offers and make sure it opens. But in general, because we are not testing the menu bar here, we're testing only the list like specific offer search page, and we should really not to go like a full use case from the homepage. Does it make sense, guys? Does it make sense why? Okay. Yeah, here's one more thing, guys. Your test case will still fail, right? Because you're still gonna have like a menu test cases, but you're gonna have like only one failure, and you will know, okay, only this button doesn't work, but the rest of my application will work. But if your button gonna be broken, like let's say a link is broken or something will happen, you will still see the clear result for the list page. All right, guys. If that's clear, let's take this URL. And the same thing, guys, if you're gonna write the manual test cases, don't say, okay, I open the home page, I open the offers, and then I'm starting to do my testing, right? Just tell straight, I open this page, and so like people who will execute your manual test cases, they are not gonna like go over again and again, and they're not gonna be blocked because the offers is broken. All right, so here we have this page, and so what's we're gonna do next? So we're gonna maximize it, of course, because probably we always like our customers gonna be use maximize window, and after that, let's actually set a little slit here, like for 2 seconds, just to make sure it's like our full page gonna be loaded. And if using a thread slip, it's gonna complain. Why? Because it says you need to handle exception for interrupted. So pretty much what it tells to us, we need to add the exception for our method here. All right, and now we need to like assert that we have only 10 services here, right? So we already have a locator, and we just need to find element and assert that it's gonna have like only 10 these cards. So how can we do that? So first of all, we're gonna call the driver object again, driver, and so here's the difference, guys. If you're interacting with one element, we used to use find element, right? But now, because we need to find multiple elements using the same locators, we need to use find elements. And this is a significant difference here, you see? So if we're gonna using find elements, it's gonna actually return a list of the elements, not the individual list. And here we need to specify by CSS selector. And here we need to pass our selector that we previously used, right? Okay, let's use mine. Okay, and to make our code more cleaner, instead of just using the like a backward slash and double quote sign, we can use a single quotes, and it's going to be the same thing. By the way, guys, do you know what this why it's putting the backward slashes here? Like why it's putting the backward slashes before the double quote sign? Do you guys know what does that mean? I mean, why it's doing that? Why do we need to put backward slashes here? Any ideas? Okay, yeah, Gary, you're right. Okay, let me explain it for people who doesn't know. So first of all, so you see, I use a double quotes to define a string, right? And inside the string, I also have a double quotes. And because for Java, it's confusing because it thinks the double quotes, probably our string is just ended, right? And this should be like as a variable. And this is why it complains. But it's not end of the string, it's just double quotes inside the string. And to tell Java, okay, just ignore these double quotes because it's not end of the screen. It's actually like just, it's actually just inside the screen. We can use this like backward slashes and tell Java, okay, just ignore these double quotes. And now it's it knows that, and now it doesn't complain. But to make it like looks nicer, we can just use a single quote here. All right. So now let's actually go go to the next line, and so let's actually open the find elements. We know, like in Java, in each method, it should return something, right? Or it should not return anything. If it's not returning anything, it should define as a void, right? If you're gonna open the find elements method, so here we can see it's actually gonna return a list of the web elements, right? So find elements, it's gonna return the list of the web elements, but find element is actually gonna return only one web element. And here we're gonna need to work with lists. So we're gonna refresh our minds from week number 4 when we covered lists in Java. So we need to keep, let's actually for now keep this web elements as a list variable, right? So we need to say list, and we need to define a type here. So it's not gonna be a strings, it's not gonna be integers, it's gonna be a list of the objects. And so you need to just remember that the find elements returns the list of the objects. It's not the text, it's the objects. And we need to define the type of the objects, and it's gonna be a web element, right? And the variable name is gonna be card lists, right? Okay, it complains that we need to import it. So let's do that. Import class, and now it's imported, and now we don't have any complaints. All right, guys, so now we have a list of the web elements, right? And so what we can do here, we can just say, okay, so technically it should be 10 web elements inside the list, right? We can say, okay, I wanna assert using a test-ng that my like count of my list is equal to 10, right? So we can use like assert equals, and who remembers how to get size of the list? Do you guys remember how to get size of the list? How to get size of the array list? Okay. Yeah, Imad, it's not length. Length method you use for strings, I believe. For list, we use a size. We use a size. Yeah, no worries, that's fine. You can actually type that, and it's gonna like show you the list of the available methods. All right, and size is gonna be equal to 10, right? So this is our actual result, and this is our expected result. All right, and let's run our test and make sure it works. All right. So now we see, okay, we still have this noise from the Chrome driver, but now we see our test run equal to 1, 1 is passed, right? So perfect, our test is working. Just to make sure it's gonna fail, so let's actually pass 9 here and see if it's gonna fail in this case. Okay, so now it failed, and it says expected is 9, but actual is 10, right? So now we know it works, and this is like our, it's assertion error. All right, guys. Does it make sense so far? Like, are you guys like following me? All right. So one more thing, guys. if you're using the find elements, if like, let's imagine there's gonna be like a not existing locator, right? And if I'm gonna run it, if you remember, when we used find element, like on find element error, if it wasn't able to find an element, it throw us an error, right? It was saying that element is not like element is not found exception, right? So for find elements, if there's like no elements using this locator, it's just gonna return the empty string, and in the end, we're just gonna have like okay, the failure. And you see the actual is 0. The size of the list is 0 because it returns the empty list, and it fails only here because it says the size is equal to 0, not equal to 10. And this is like one of the major difference that you need to understand. If you're using like find element, only one element is gonna throw the exception if element is not found. If you're using a find element, it's just gonna return the empty string, empty list. And you need to be very careful with that. So you always like need to check if the size is not 0 or if size like equal to some numbers. All right, so let's move on. Let's move on. All right, guys, let's do more complex exercise and more complex test case. And let's actually create a test case for filtering data, right? So the list of the services we can filter, and we can filter by service type. And we can say, okay, show me only the 3D captures services, right? So I can click here. And now we see it's only returns the service type as a 3D capture, right? And the size is not 10 because it's only 5 services which provides 3D capture as a service type. All right, guys, so let's create a test case for the filter, right? Once we will select the 3D capture as a filter, we can see only 3D captured services are being returned. So let's go back here. Let's actually undo this one. And let's copy that. So we don't have to write it one more time. Okay, and let's name it as a filter by service type test, right? All right, so this part is going to be the same. The difference is going to be here, so we don't need that. So first of all, after we landed on the offers page, we need to let me reset it. Let me refresh the page. And we need to find a locator for this like service type drop down, right? And if I'm going to inspect it, actually, you know what? Let's close, because this is a Chrome driver instance. And let's do it here because I already zoomed it in. All right, guys, if we're gonna take a look here, we can see it's not, it has some of the values, right? But I assume it's not gonna unique because from what I see here, probably the state gonna have the same class names, country probably gonna have the same class names, right? So let's actually, guys, let's together find this locator. So for clicking to this select element. And so what I can use here, I can use like, I don't know, like prime drop down class name. Let's start with that. Prime drop down. And you see, it's found 3 elements. Why? Because we have 3 drop downs, right? All right. So what do you guys think? If I'm clearly if I can clearly see there's like no unique elements here, so it's going to be the same class name, default label is going to be the same, like I mean filter true. Okay, so this is actually interesting. Let me try this one. Maybe this one's going to be unique. Interesting. Okay. So for a state, it actually has a unique locator here. But let's think about the service type. Guys, what do you think? How can we select this element? Because it doesn't have a filter through here for the P dropdown. Yeah, it has a P multi-select and it has a default label select. But for me, it looks like, oops, there's like nothing in common here. Let's maybe try P multi-select using the, okay, so it's only 2 elements using a P multi-select. And let's actually try to use this default label. Maybe it's going to be unique. No, it's not unique. Here's the 2 elements, and the country has the same value here. All right, guys. So what do you think? What's your thoughts about that? How can we locate it? Here is actually, guys, quick trick. I'm not sure if Sergey showed you on Thursday, like Chrome driver, Chrome DevTool, sorry, it's actually created ability. You can click to the, you can right click here using your mouse, and you can go to the copy, and you can actually copy the XPath, or you can copy the selector, right? Selector actually stands for CSS selector in Chrome. So technically, I can use a Chrome help to generate locators, right? So I can use copy selector, and I can pass it here. And now we can see it only located 1 element, right? But what do you guys think? What's wrong with this locator?
It's too long and it's coming from the root.
Yeah, and do you remember the name of the, if it's coming from the root? Like what
Absolute?
Yeah, it's an absolute locator. It's an absolute path. Exactly. And as you remember, absolute path is a bad practice. We're not using the absolute path, like in any case, we don't use it. So that's why it's a bad locator. We can't really use it, even though it's only 1. It's a unique, and it's only 1 element is found here. All right, so let's actually see if, let's actually try the XPath and see if it's going to be the same. Yeah, it's the same thing, right? You see, it's actually, it's not, so for XPath, if you're using the absolute path, it's actually start with 1 slash, and it technically should start from the HTML, right? But Chrome, it's kind of like still using the relevant XPath, but it's still like too long, right? It's still using like all of the element and all of the dependencies, and our locator is not going to be, it's not going to be stable. It's going to be fragile, because we can't just use this like ugly locator, right? Because it's not going to be stable. Okay, guys. So let's actually, I would say like never use any like locator generators. Always try to write locator by yourself. I know like sometimes it can be painful. I know sometimes you just won't be able to find locator, but always try to do it by yourself. Always try to practice writing locators, because I mean, once you will start your job as a QA automation engineer, and once you will start to work on the web automation, all days you will just write, you will just try to find unique locators, and you will try to use like a best practices. Try to find like more short locator, precise, stable one. So the only way to achieve it is basically just to practice. All right, guys. So let's actually try now using the XPath. So what I want to try here, so as I'm seeing here, the only unique thing for this dropdown is going to be service type, right? So this is like only unique identification for my dropdown. It's actually, I mean, two approaches. I can locate the full filter box, and I can say, okay, locate this dropdown only is the first one using the index. Or another approach, I can find the service type here and locate this dropdown only related to the service type. So how can I do that? So you can see the service type, it's a label, right? It's a text. And if I want to find element by text, I will need to use a XPath. And let's actually start. Let's actually say double quotes, say label. And inside that, if I want to use locate by text, I need to use built-in contains function, right? It's going to be contains. And inside of this function, it's going to be, I believe it's going to be text. And other one is going to be service type. Okay, let me just use service type. Okay, so I believe it should be like this. Yeah, text. If you want to allocate element by text, you just use contains. This is a built-in function in the XPath, and as a parameters, you're saying okay, allocate by text with opening closing parentheses, and then you're specifying the value. So it's going to be service type. So now it's located my text here, right? And but the thing is, if I'm going to click to the service type, it's not going to open the dropdown, right? It's not going to open the dropdown, and I need to find a way. I need to find a way to after finding the service type, click to this dropdown. Okay, guys. So what do you think? What's going to be the next step here? After I found this label locator. So it doesn't have any child elements, right? It's kind of like element without any child here. So I cannot go down. And actually the drop down is not child element for the label, right? It's actually, they are siblings. They are on the same label. It's like a brother and sister. So I cannot locate multi-select under the label. So what do you guys think what I can do here? Okay, just go ahead, unmute your mics, throw me any crazy ideas that comes to your mind, and we will just do it all together using the brainstorm.
Maybe we put double line and then put p hash multi-select.
Yeah, we can try that, but you see, again, multi-select is not the child one, right? So we always use a slash or a double slash once we want to find child element, right? But because they're on the same level, it won't be able to locate it like that. Because you see, it's a final one. There's like no way to go down. It doesn't have any child elements. So we can't really do that here, unfortunately. But what we can do in XPath and what CSS cannot do, after locating the element, so we can find the child elements, but in XPath, we can also locate the parent element, right? Using the child element. So we're not only can go down, we can also go to the up. So how does it work? So after you specify the single slash, we can say we can specify double dots here, and then you see it goes to the parent one. It goes to the one element above, which is a form group, right? And the for group, it's a parent element, and label and multi-select is like two childs, right? And after I go here, I can actually try to select by p multi-select. So let's try. And here we go. We were able to select it. One more time, guys. What we did here, we found a label service type by using the text, right? And because the p multi-select is not the child of the service type, it's actually, they are siblings. I will need to go up to the parent one and then find the p multi-select, this one. And this is how we pretty much going to the up and going to the down. Does it make sense, guys? I mean, here, because our locator is kind of like complex one, we need to use complex solutions. But like in most cases, if you see something like that and you need to write like these complex locators, again, it's better maybe talk to your developers and say, hey, if we know this 3 drop downs going to be static, maybe you guys can help me and create some unique IDs. In this case, it will be easier for us. But because we don't have it, and let's assume we don't have like any developers nearby, we work in remote, and they're not that responsive, we need to write more complex ones. All right, let's use this locator. Let's go here. And so what we need to do here, we need to click to that, right? So we need to click to that to this drop down to be appeared. So we can say driver, click, find element, and use by XPath and pass our XPath here. And again, we can just use single quotes here, so it will look a little bit nicer. All right, step number 2. How can I locate this 3D capture? If you're gonna open it, we can see it's pretty much the same thing. It doesn't have like any unique locators, because pretty much this is a list, right? And air conditions, 3D capture, appliance installation, and all of that. This is the same elements. The only difference is they have like a different text, right? But other than that, it doesn't have like any other differences. All right. So what we can do, we can pretty much try to do the same thing. We can locate by text. And instead of service type, we can say, okay, I want to locate by 3D capture, right? And here, yeah, so it's like only one element and it works. Pretty much we can use this locator to locate an element. So we can say driver, find element, the same thing by XPath, Pass it here. So use a single quotes here and use a click method. All right, so what's gonna happen after I click here? Only services with 3D capturing should be displayed, right? So the thing is, like, because we can see it's like some JavaScript is running here, we need to wait until it's gonna finish loading. So we can put 2 seconds here. And so our assertion here is gonna be, okay, I wanna make sure only services with 3D capturing I can only see here. So this is my assertion, right? So what we can do, in the card, it actually has a service type, 3D capture. So I can see, I can try to locate this element to make sure I will be able to find any unique one for 3D capturing. All right. So let's go here. So shape red, 3D capturing, raw, card shape, not much. Oh, actually, let's take a look here, guys. So it says div class with service type, right? So let's try that, and let's say maybe it's gonna be okay. Let me grab the full one, and maybe it's gonna be unique one. Let's use okay. Let's use a CSS now. So we can say class star equal to service type flex here. And because, oh, okay, so it can find it. Yeah, so again, because we use star here, star stands for a partial match. So there's like no classes with this value if we are asserting by the full string. But if you're gonna use a partial match, so we can see this 5, it found only 5 elements with 3D capturing. So let's actually double check that all of these elements are under these cards. Okay, so this one is here, third one is here, this one is here, and this is the last one. Okay, so we have only 5 cards with 3D capturing. So this is perfect, that's what we need. All right, let's use it. Let's pass it here. Again, we're not going to use double quotes. Let's use single ones. And we're going to store it as a list. So we can just copy that. And let's see, service type card. Find elements by using CSS selector. All right, guys. So I can see some notes on the chat. Okay, George, I see you posted the locator. Sorry, I didn't see it in the first place. Well, we can use your locator, George, as well, but it's still like not ideal solution, right? I mean, I think like in this case, it's not going to be ideal locators because it's a drop down. There's nothing much that we can do about that. All right, guys. So let's actually open our page one more time. So we know like it's returned five cards, right? But if we're gonna take a look to our test case, I don't need to assert it's only 5 services is being returned, right? I mean, maybe tomorrow someone will create like one more service with 3D capturing and it's gonna return 6, right? In this case, we're gonna have a failure. And so we wanna make sure we will make our test cases like less data, I mean, more data agnostic. So we don't know like in advance that's like how many cards is gonna be appeared, right? But what we actually need to verify here, all I need to verify is I only see the cards with service type 3D capture, right? That's the only one thing that I need to make sure. I need to make sure here it's only appear 3D capture text, right? So this is going to be my test case. All right. So let's go back to our test and let's take a look here. Okay, let's run it and make sure it works. Let's actually try to print our list. Print ln. Let's actually print it and see what it's gonna return to us. What's it gonna print? Okay, it's gonna open the browser. It's gonna open the cards. It's gonna click. It's only 3D captures, and it passed because we don't have like any assertion. And so this is a, yeah, you see, this is a list, right? It says by CSS selector, and you just return 5 of this list. So it's like, because it's objects, it's a web element objects, right? And so what we need to do here, guys, we need to, it's a web elements list, and from each web element, we actually can grab the text from this element. So let's say, let's actually, let's actually give you, let me give you some example here. Let's comment out for a second. So driver find element, as I said, is returning the web element as well, right? So we can actually store it as a variable. So we can say web element 3D capture. Actually, I can't capture label. I think I can't create the variables using the digits. All right, guys. So if I remove click here, it's gonna return the web element, right? But after that, what I can do, I can print a text from this web element. So I can just say system out print line, and just call this web element, and I can say get text from this web element, right? And it should return me the text from this web element. And if I'm gonna run it, okay, so now we can see it actually prints the text from the web element, right? If I will remove the get text, it's not gonna print me a text, it's just gonna print me the web element object, which basically will tell nothing to us. So now you see, it's actually returning the same thing. It says Chrome on driver, XPath, and this is actually web element object. All right, so now, again, to retrieve a text from the web element, we need to use built-in method getText. Let me remove everything from here. Let me return it. All right, guys. So again, here we have a list of the web elements, right? And we need to make sure like each of these cards, like each element of this like each web element on this list has a text 3D capture. So this is what we need to do. What do you guys think? How can we do that? again, guys, we have a list of elements, right? And I need to make sure for each value on the list has specific text. So we need to remind ourselves week number 4 when we covered the list and when we interacted with the list, right? When we filled it in, when we printed the values, when we check the values has contained some value. I mean, when the list contains some values. So what do you guys think? How can we check that each card, like each web element in this list, contains 3D capture? Any ideas?
Through the loop.
Yep, exactly. Good job, Natalia. We can use for loop, right? So we can say for. Let's use for each loop. So we can say like web element, and go through the service type cards, right? So we pretty much element. Okay, and what's gonna be inside the loop, Natalia? What do you think?
It will be service type cards. Return.
Do we really? Okay, let's simplify it. We just want to print each text of each web element. How can we do that? Okay, no idea.
Service type cards, and then we put in square brackets element.
So here's I see what you're saying, Natalia, but again, this is a for each loop, right? So we don't need to trigger them by indexes. The element already will have like this index, so we can just say element instead of that. So it's going to be the same thing. So pretty much, I mean, again, for each loop, it's the same thing as you would do like for integer I equal to 0, and then like I less than service type size, and I plus plus, right? And then we're gonna grab this one by index, right? So it's gonna be like grab them like one by one. So when we're using the each loop, it's gonna be the same, pretty much the same thing, but we kind of like using the shorter way. So pretty much here, I can just interact with this element. So what we need to do here is just to use for each element, just to use a get text. And technically, it should print each text of each element here. Let's actually run it and see if that works. Okay, and now we see all of these elements has 3D capture as a value, right? But we don't need to print it. We actually need to assert it, right? We want to make sure like each of them gonna have a 3D capture. How can we assert it? What do you guys think? how can we like assert that each of them has this value? So we can just type assert equals, and our expected result gonna be here, right? And our actual result is gonna be 3D capture, right? And let's remove it. And if you're gonna run it one more time, okay, and now it passes because each of this card has like each of them has this 3D capture value. All right, I see the question in the chat. Assert equals, yeah. Good job, Gary. It's exactly the same approach as I did here. All right, guys, does it make sense for you? Do you guys have any questions about the lists, how to interact with a list, and how to assert values, and why do we need to do that? Any questions, guys? Is it all clear? Just need to review a little more. Yeah, you're actually going to have a homework regarding the list, and you just need you not only review it, you also will need to do some exercises. All right, guys. So this is what I want to show you for the fine list. Let's actually have a quick break right now, and after the break, we're gonna have a next topic, and we're gonna start to review the test in G. So like today, we're gonna have like 2 topics. All right, let's have like a 10 minutes break. So now it's 11:13, and let's get back in 11:23 in California time. So let's get back in 10 minutes. Let's have like a coffee, do other things, and refresh your mind. And with refreshed mind, let's actually start to cover the new topic, which gonna be the test in G. All right, guys. See you here in 11:26. Don't be late. All right. So I'm gonna unmute myself and close the camera, and I'll be back here in 11:23. All right. See you in 10 minutes. All right, guys, let's continue. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me, see my screen?
Yes, we do.
All right, perfect. All right, so now let's talk about the next topic, which is going to be TestNG framework overview. So let's put to the presentation mode. Okay, so we already talked about the TestNG. I really briefly explain you why we need that. So now we're gonna talk more about what it is, what the advanced features, and why many people using a TestNG and not other frameworks, and why in general we need that. All right, so TestNG, I mean, it's a testing framework. So what it does, again, it just collects our tests, identifies the tests, and running them. And in the end, it generates reports, right? Again, it's like a three purposes. First one, to collect test cases. Second one, to run them. And third one, generate some reports, right? So pretty much like, as you remember, in IntelliJ, it has like specific format, right? It says how many tests in general were run, how many passes, how many failed, how many skipped. And this is like all TestNG. This is all generated by TestNG. And that's why we are using that. Don't be confused, because when people say like testing framework, they usually don't mean a TestNG. They usually mean the full program that we are writing right now, right? That we are creating right now. It's like our testing framework, but inside of our testing framework, we're using another testing framework, TestNG. So TestNG is going to be like in the package of our own testing framework. All right. So another popular framework for Java, it's a JUnit. And what the main advantages and differences, TestNG is like more powerful. It's more modern. It supports more features. It's like, I mean, TestNG is more complex, and it's like it can do pretty much anything that you ever want to do in a test, like for your test. So let's say later on, once we will use parameterization, behavior-driven approach, like all you can do with TestNG. And later on, once we will do parallel execution, once we'll run our test in multiple browsers, it's all pretty much, we're going to use a TestNG, and TestNG going to help us to run our test like in 10 different browsers and just generate one single report. JUnit is also a very good framework, but it's just less capable. And in most cases, you will see the test suite in Java using the TestNG because it's like more popular. But pretty much they are very similar, and they are using the same thing. All right. So again, the features, so it supports annotations. It has much more annotations than JUnit. It uses more Java and object-oriented features. I mean, flexible runtime configurations, makes our life easier, basically, providing us ways to run and manage our test cases. All right, so let's talk about the annotations. We already covered it, like one of them. So you know, like test annotation mark test method as test methods as a test, right? So this is how TestNG knows that we are using the. Okay, let me share my full screen here, so you can see my IntelliJ as well. All right, so using this test annotation, TestNG knows that this is a test method, right? This is like one of the most popular annotations that you're already familiar with. Let's actually close this, and let's close this as well. And let's open our presentation here. All right, so what the other annotation exists? So for the test annotation, you can also disable test cases. Let's imagine you have like a list of the 10 test cases, and application has a bug, and it's a known bug. Like developers were fixing that, and you want to skip this these 2 test cases because they're not going to work because our application is broken, right? So in this case, instead of just commenting them out, you can use this feature enabled false, and it will just skip this test case. So let me show you how it works. Let's actually open the login page. So if I will add enabled false, and let's actually do this as well. Enabled false. Or here you can say enabled true. And if you're gonna run the full test class, I mean, you know, like instead of just running the individual test cases, you can run the full test class as well. And if you're gonna do that, what's gonna happen? It's actually failed because we made it fail, right? But anyway, you can see it's only run 1 test case, right? It's only run 1 test case and it skipped other ones. So let's say here, if I would say both of them true, or I mean, it's true by default, you can just delete it and it's going to be the same thing. And if I'm going to run the test class one more time, so you can see it's going to run the first one. Okay, and now it runs 2 of them. For some reason, my login test failed. Okay, let's take a look a little bit later. So now you see, like using the enabled, we can disable or enable our test cases. Again, that's going to be the same, pretty much the same thing if you will just comment them out. So let's say you can do, you can just comment out the test and it will ignore it. I mean, it's going to be the same thing, but I would not recommend you to comment out test. It's better just to disable it. It will make more clear why do you want to disable why do you want to disable the test case. All right, so now let's go to presentation and what's the other features. You can set priority. You can specify like which test case you want to have like higher priority and which test case you want to set lower priority. So in total, it's 4 priorities. The 1 is the highest one, and number 4 is the lowest one. And if you will set the priorities, it will run the highest priorities first with priority 1, and it will run the lowest priorities, which number 4 in the last of your run. I'm not sure if you're going to use it. I didn't really use it that much, priority features, but just in case, if you want to run your test in a specific order, you can just use a priority, and then you will know it's going to use first priorities more than less priority test cases. All right. So description, you can specify the description of your test case. So you can say, this is a test case, say description, and say, just give like small description like this is title test case, right? Or some of the information about that. Or you can say enabled false and explain why it's disabled. You can say disabled because of title issue on homepage, right? So this is how you pretty much using the two attributes for the annotation, and you can explain why you disable this test case and what causing the issue. All right, so let's go next. So for parameterization, we actually gonna cover that on Tuesday and Thursday. So we're gonna show you like more advanced things for TestNGs that you can do. So I'm gonna skip it for now. And then let's actually talk about the test hooks. Let's see how can we group them and how can we optimize our test cases. So let's, I mean, in a shorter words, you can specify some of the actions that you want to run before each test case and run them after each test case, or before test suite or after test suite. It's kind of like preconditions in your test case, and also it's going to be like some cleanup after the test cases. So let's take a look here. Okay, let me make it a little bit smaller. And so for some reason, we are not quitting our browser here. Let's disable that. All right. I'm not sure how to make my font smaller. All right, guys, let's take a look to these test cases, right? Why do you guys see the common thing here in these two test cases? What's in common for both of them?
WebDriver driver, driver get, driver manage, and driver quit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what the WebDriver driver does?
It does initialize the browser.
Yep, exactly. So this initiates the browser, right? And this closes the browser. And this line of codes we have like in every test case, right? Because to run our test, we need to open the browser and maximize the window. It's also like the command is going to be for all test cases, right? And what we can do, instead of repeating the code over and over again, we can just use our hooks to specify the actions that we want to do before each and after each test case. So we can say public void. We can name it as a setup. You can pretty much give it any name. Setup. And this is going to be our precondition, right? And so we can move our browser initiation, our driver manage. And the problem is because in this methods, in test method, it doesn't know like which driver we're calling, right? We didn't initiate it, we initiated it here. So we will like inside the class, we will need to initiate, I mean, not initiate, declare the null driver, so it's not gonna complain. So we can say something like web driver. Here it is. And so pretty much we're gonna initiate our variable here, and we don't need to specify the type here because we already specified it. And now our setup is gonna say, okay, so the driver variable is gonna be our new Chrome driver. And then I want it to be maximized. I want it to open it like in a full page. All right, and let's actually remove it from here as well. Remove this one as well. And the same thing here. We don't really need that one. All right, so now we can see it's highlighted as a purple. And by highlighting as a purple, we can see it's all of these objects is actually referring to the same driver object here. All right, guys. And one important thing, we need to specify the annotation. We need to say before the method, right? Before method, it means before each method test, right? Each test case, it's a method. And that's why we need to say before method. If we want to say, specify some of the hook for entire test suite, we can say before class, right? And make sure you're selecting a test indicator. And so if you're gonna use a before class, it's gonna do this set of actions before we're gonna run the homepage test class, right? And in this case, it will do some of the actions before test class are being run. But for now, let's use the before method. And after that, we need to say what we want to do after test execution is complete, right? So we can say after method, and we need to import it. And instead of setup, we can say tear down. And in tear down is going to be driver quit. All right. So now let's remove that. And let's remove the quit here as well. And let's remove the quit here as well. All right, now let's run our title test one more time. Let's remove 2 here, so it's not gonna fail. And let's see if it's gonna work. Okay, let's close all not used drivers. All right, so here we can see in the result, it's passed and it works. So now you see we got rid of all the driver initiation or all the driver teardown from the test itself. In the test, we only use the test logic, right? And all the driver initialization and driver closing, we pretty much removed out of our test cases. And one more advantage of that is even though if our test will fail in the middle, it's still gonna close the browser, because before what happened, it's actually didn't close the browser and our browser left like unused because it was failed. Tests were failed because before the driver were about to quit. Okay, so now what we can do here, we can remove our initialization and we can remove this part and we can remove this as well. And let's run our login test. I'm actually very curious why our test case is failing. Let's actually debug this issue before I will continue. So let's actually take a look to the error. You guys should not be scared of the errors if your test is failing, because the error message, it's trying to tell you what's going on, right? What went wrong, and it tries to provide you as much materials as possible. So here it says unable to locate element using the CSS selector, and this was our CSS selector, right? Let's take a look to the logic here. So I think what's happened, probably it took some time until this error appeared. Let's use a thread slave 2 seconds before, and let's try to run one more time. Okay, and now it's passing. The issue was because after we click to the submit button, um, it took some time until the JavaScript will process and until the error message will be returned. And that caused a failure. All right, guys. So now let's do the following. I don't really like that our login page, login test is under the homepage test, right? So for the login itself, it's not part of the homepage. So we need to create another class, Java class for a login test. So we can say login tests, create a class, and here we can just cut this test case and move it here, right? And because it's a new class, I will need to copy this before and after methods because we still need to initialize this browser, right? Because our before method and after method, because they are under this class, their scope only within this class, and that's pretty much it. All right, so let's run it and see if that works. The email password, error message, and it works. All right, so we have like these hooks here as well, and let's do the same thing for offer list test, right? That we just created. So here is going to be the same thing. We can just like copy this part, paste it here, and then we need to delete all the driver. And this one as well. All right. So now let's run our test case, make sure it works. So we already have 3 test suites. All right, first one. All right, both of them are passed. Perfect. All right, guys. So let's now take a look again. We have 3 test suites, right? Homepage test, login test, and offer list test. And here's my question for you. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? How can we optimize it even more? So we pretty much moved our driver initiation and driver closing to the before hooks and after hook, right? After the method. And we did it only once for each of these test cases. But what do you guys think? How can we optimize it even more?
Create a new class that will include before and after method and extend it in all 3 classes.
Yep. And what's the name? What's the name in terms of OOP for this approach? George, do you remember?
I know we use extend for
yeah. What's for we use extend?
For the class that get all the methods included in the other class, that extended class actually.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, inheritance. Yeah, good job, Aidar. Yeah, this is I mean, you were right. I just want to hear OOP approach that you were talking about. You guys remember, right? What kind of approaches we use for OOP? It's inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation, and abstraction, right? So what George are suggesting, so we can create another class where we will put each of our driver initiation and driver closing. Let's name it as a base test. All right, so now we have a base test. And here we want to include each of our before method and after method. So let's move it here. Right, let's copy all the imports. And now, because we have it in a base test, we can extend it, inherit it, right? Inherit from the base test. And because we're going to inherit it, we don't really need it here, right? And now we can see that our driver doesn't complain because it's going to grab this value for the driver from the base test class, which inherited from for the homepage test. Let's run it and see if that works. All right. So now we can see it works, and we can do the same thing for each of our test class, right? So we can remove it from here. So now you see it complains because it can find a driver, and once we will do inheritance, extends base test, right? And here as well, so we can get rid of that, and we can say extends base test. All right. So now, if you're gonna run it, I mean, it's still, I mean, it should work. And now, so you see, we created the base test, and what's gonna be the base test? Base test gonna include all the common features for each individual test class, right? I mean, because we are doing the web automation, we know for web automation, we will need to have a driver, right? And we will need to open it before running our test, and we will need to close it after our test is complete, right? This is why we can create like another class for a base test and leave it all there and just make everything be inherited from the base test. And that's like help us to manage our code because we are avoiding the code duplication, code duplicates, and we're just defining it only in one place, and we can run it from here. Like let's say in the future, if we want to use, instead of Chrome, we want to use Safari or the Firefox, we can just change one line of code to change it, and it's going to be run in the different browsers. I mean, as a quick example, and we don't really need to change it like for each individual test class. Does it make sense, guys? Are you guys still with me? Okay. Okay. Perfect. All right, guys. So let's go back here so we can remove all of this not necessary imports, and as this one as well. Okay, so we have like only first test case, right? So this is a login wrong credentials test. And let's say we have another test case for empty email. Let's actually check if I input empty email, it's throwing me the error, right? Like a test case. So let's say login empty email. Right, and the only difference here is going to be the email. Instead of wrong email, it's just going to say, it's just going to pass the empty string. And if you're going to run it, okay, so actually it's failing because error message looks a little bit different, right? And because it looks a little bit different, we will need to change expected result from here. So let's go to sign in. Let's actually reproduce it manually. So let's inspect this element. And so it says, placeholder email, give help, block, ng, star inserted. So let's actually check if this locator is unique, right? No, it's not unique. Also not unique. Okay, so what we can say here, we can say it's gonna be our div method. Okay, so now we can say it's a div method with this class, and it's only one unique element, right? So we can copy that, and we can verify after we input the empty email actual text here. We're gonna change the locator, and the text is gonna be not username or password incorrect. It's just gonna be email is required, right? So let's try one more time. Okay, it still failed. Let's see why. Let's take a look to the error, because it's help us to, it says unable to locate element, right? So for some reason, it wasn't able to locate this element. This is interesting because I think it worked here. Okay, so it says your email is required, should be fine. That's interesting. All right, so forum group has error. Let's try here. Let's say class. Okay, let's say class class equal to this. And I think I just made some mistake here. Where's that? Actually, yeah, maybe, you know what? Maybe I can, oh, I just missed the F here. All right. So div, and under this class, I can say, okay, I want to grab a child, div, right? So it says only one element. So let's actually try and see if that works. Okay, let's optimize it. Get text, div, email is required. All right, let's try one more time. All right, perfect. And now it looks like it works. All right, guys. So we can create like as many test cases as we want. I think in your homework you needed to create a test case for success login, empty credentials, and wrong credentials. So we can like test each of these test case. But what I want to do here with you, I want to little bit optimize our code, right? Because if you're gonna take a look to that, I mean, of course, now we know what the Selenium does, right? we kind of like can read this code and we will understand what it's doing, right? So here, we remember the get method. I mean, the driver is actually going to be our browser, and get method is going to be our method for opening the page, right? And we're using this method for each of our tests, right? Which is not a big deal because it's only 2 test cases. But let's say if we're going to have like a 10 test cases, we're gonna use it like 20 times, right? And let's say if our developers, instead of login, will change the page for sign in, right? That's mean I will need to make the change for every 20 test cases where I use this URL. So how can I optimize it? Let's start with login. Yeah, go ahead.
We can create web elements in the class that will be extended to all the methods. And then just, for example, we can create the extended web element for the password, which we will name password input, and web element dot password input equals with driver find element by CSS selector password.
So one more time, you're suggesting create a new class for, and there create methods, right?
Or we can create it in base tests, or we can create it in the class, in the same class at the top if it's not extended in all 3 classes. I mean, if it's not used in all 3 classes the same.
Yeah. Yeah, so here's the one thing. So pretty much like to get to the URL for each test case is gonna be different, right? Here we're gonna open the login, and here we're gonna open the search, and here we're gonna open the homepage. And pretty much you're kind of thinking on the right way, but the only difference, like the data, I mean URL, gonna be a little bit different, right? And technically, like let's say if we're gonna use the email field, we're gonna use it for login test, sign up test, but we're not gonna use them for offer listing page, right? So it's not gonna be unique, but in a base test, we're trying to have only unique methods for each of the test cases. So let's actually start with simple steps. Yeah, George, you're actually thinking in the right way, but we're gonna implement something similar that you were talking about later on, I think in week number 9, once we will cover the page object model. So in this case, we're gonna move all of there to the page objects. All right, guys, so instead of driver get, what I can do here, I can create a method to opening the login page, right? So I can say public void open login page. I can grab this and I can pass it, and then I can just say, I can just call this method, right? And now, I mean, we're pretty much having the separate method to opening the login page. And in case, like, if developers decide, like, okay, we want to change our URL, so it's not going to be /login, it's going to be /signin. We will need to change it only in one place, and it's going to be affected for all of these test cases because we are calling this method. And here we're trying to use more better approaches, like avoid duplicated code, and also avoid like hard-coded values here. Okay, does it make sense so far, guys? All right. So what else, guys? What else we can optimize here? What about this part? Do you think we can optimize it somehow? I mean, and here's another thing, guys, because we are automation engineers and we kind of know what it does here, right? We know like it's a driver, it's finding the element, it passing the keys, right? But if it's gonna be like another QA who doesn't know the Java, who doesn't know Selenium, do you think he will understand what we were doing here? Probably not. He will be just scared and he will say, hey, I don't know what you're doing here. What do you have like so many words, so many dots? What does all of that means? And I don't know what it's actually doing. And if you look here, it's kind of like more precise, right? We know like it's actually opening the login page and it's more in a human readable language. And I feel like this line will make more sense to him rather than this one, right? Because for non-technical people, it doesn't make sense. Okay, Gary's suggesting to use different weights instead of using a slip. Yes, you're right, Gary, but we will do that a little bit later, but you think in the right direction. But yeah, we will need to remove slips, but here I'm talking about this part. Yeah, George, you're right. Pretty much here we can create a method for entering the email, right? So let's actually go here and let's create a method for entering email. So we can say public void enter email. And but here's the trick, guys. So you see here and here we are passing the different values, right? Even though like our locator is going to be the same, but we may pass different different values. So I don't want to create like enter valid email, right? Or I can say enter empty email, or enter, I mean, not valid email. How can I create this method more flexible to handle different situation when we add different inputs? What do you guys think? Maybe use arrays. Okay. I probably need more explanation, Aidar. I didn't get your question. I mean, I didn't get what you're trying to say. But quick answer is no. There's like more simple approach, and you already know about that.
Public void enter email string A and send keys A.
What's the other? Yeah, George. What's the other name for that?
I'm sorry, I don't remember the names. I just remember how it's done. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine, guys. That's fine. But yeah, you're right. The only thing is, I want you to talk in the more professional language, right? So people in the interview will like understand that you are on the same page. So
we have to pass parameters inside.
Yeah, exactly, parameters. So we can make this method parameterized, right? Instead of just hard coding it like that, we can say, okay, enter email and receive an email value. And here it's not going to be hard coded, right? And it's going to be dynamically passed in email. And how we're going to use this method? So we can say, where is it? Here we can say enter email and pass this email. Okay, let's delete it. And here, pretty much the same thing. The only difference is gonna be empty string. and delete it. And because we know like this flip, we're using only this specifically for the entering email, we can get rid of that and paste it here. Right? So we can get rid of that. All right, guys. So now you see we have like open login page, enter email and the email value. And we pretty much can do the same thing for the password and for clicking the submit button, right? So we can say, yeah, I need to add here error handling. So we can say enter email. We can say enter password. This is going to be the password, and it's going to be the password here, and locator here is going to be the password as well. And it's not 4 seconds, it's 2 seconds, right? All right, and now we can go here and just say enter password and pass this password value right here. And we don't need that. Okay, and for clicking, the same thing. We can just say click, submit, right? And because we don't have this method yet, it's highlighted as red, but we can type option return. And IntelliJ IDE, it will suggest that, hey, do you want me to generate click method in login test? I can say sure. And you see, it's generated it for me. So I can just pass it here. I can pass it here. And here we go. All right, guys. So the only difference here is our expected result is gonna be like a little bit different, but still we can also optimize it, right? So how do you guys like this approach? Do you like it more? Or you have some doubts about it? Guys? Yeah, it's clean. It's clean. I mean, well, it's a clean first. Second of all, like it's like more in a human readable language, right? People can understand, go over your codes, what's actually going on here. So it's like opening login page, entering email, entering password, clicking submit. And the other advantage is we can, besides that, we can also, we're avoiding the duplicating code. So we're pretty much writing what it should do and just calling this method. And we're using the don't repeat yourself approach in programming, like well known in programming. So we don't really need to write the same code twice, right? And the other good thing here, we are pretty much trying to leave login test only the test logic here, right? So we're pretty much getting rid of all the unnecessary stuff like initiating the browser, closing the browser, and we only leaving as a test logic. It's going to be the same as the test case are written. And yes, so this is advantage of programming when we can group and more modularized our methods. All right, so let's me do the same thing here as well. Enter password, it's going to be my password. Click submit. Okay, terminator here. Let's And let's get rid of this one. All right. Let's actually, to finish that, let's actually think about this one and this one, right? What do you guys think? How can we optimize this as well? The difference here, we can see like both of these methods, they are returning the text, right? They are returning the text. Only one difference, they are using the different locators. Any thoughts, guys? What do you guys think? How can we optimize it?
Create a method that will get a string, like public void, the name, and then string, and actual string equals find element by CSS selector, and the actual string that we included in the for the string CSS selector.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it together. So you select public. Instead of void, return a string, right?
Yes.
Okay, and what's going to be the best method name for that? How can we name our method?
CSS selector.
Method name. Well, do you think it's like really good? What we're trying to do here? Each of our method, guys, it's a verb, right? It's actions. Methods are actions. If they're returning something, they are doing some actions, right?
Get text.
Get text. Oh, all right. Yeah, it's closer, but what kind of text is this? What kind of text we are trying to receive?
It's the text that we get from the CSS selector.
Yeah, but like more, if you think about more like generalized, right? What kind of text we're trying to get here? Like
element.
Yeah, but again, guys, so this is the text I'm trying to get, right? From the tester perspective, what this text is about?
Assertion text, so that they are checking.
This is error message, right? I mean, this is pretty much error message. It says like email is required.
Actual result?
Well, I would
Get error text.
Yes, exactly. Good job, Barry. Yeah, so we can say get error text or error message or anything. But here we explicitly need to say what our method is doing, right? Because we don't want to look to the details, right? Looking at the method name, we need to understand what it's actually doing, right? Without looking to the details of implementation. Does it make sense, guys? Does it make sense, George? What I was trying to get?
Yes.
All right. Let's continue. Do I need to provide any? Do I need to provide any parameters?
It's gonna accept a string, which is a CSS selector that we're gonna change for every CSS selector that's different.
Yeah, we can do that. Yep. So okay, and here, what it's gonna do? It's gonna return our string, right? Yours? That's what you were trying to say.
Yes.
Okay. Dun, dun, dun.
And change by CSS selector instead of actual CSS selector, the string CSS selector.
Something like that, right?
Yes.
And now what we can do here, we can say string actual text equal to get error text and pass this selector, right? And okay, we can also move sleep here. Remove that and add our exception. Yeah, so pretty much we can reuse this method as well here. So we can go here, say the same thing, and pass this selector, right? All right. So how do you guys like this approach? Specifically, that we were just created with George, like this method, get error text. What do you think about pros and cons? Let's put this question this way. I mean, it's flexible, it's still parameterized, right? So we can like use it for asserting the multiple errors with different locators. But what's the disadvantage of that?
It's more work.
Why? Why do you think so, Natalia?
I think it's more confusing. I mean, it will take more time in order to create all these methods.
All right, so let's think about, I want to create empty, like test case for empty passwords, right? So how can I do that? I can just, okay, let's do that manually. So I can say test, I can say public void login empty email test, right? So here, so how can I, sorry, not the email, password test. Password. So pretty much it's going to be exactly like this, right? The only difference is going to be email is going to be not empty. It's going to be like that, right? But the password is going to be empty, and it will say password is required. Okay, let me see what on handling exception. Okay. So now you see how long it took me to create a new test case for empty password test. Yes, like literally like just a minute, right? And why it took me only a minute? Because I already had like some helper methods to help me to create my test cases faster, right? Because I don't have to like initiate the browser. I don't need to say like, hey, driver find element by this locator. I don't need to find like these locators again. I already have all of these methods for this page, right? And because I already made this work for creating these methods, now for me, it's much easier to create a new test cases. Does it make sense, guys? Does it make sense, Natalia?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so this is why we're creating them. We're actually creating a method which will help for us to create more test cases, right? And this is actually the definition of a good testing framework. If testing framework is good enough, it will just easy for you to create the test cases. If a testing framework is bad, this means it will be more confusing for you creating a test cases, right? And that's why if you will start to work in a company which doesn't have any testing framework at all, and once they will tell you, hey, we want to automate our test cases, I mean, first 2 weeks or like, I don't know, 3 weeks, you probably wouldn't write any single test case. Like first like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you will just creating a test cases, or you will creating just a testing framework. And it will actually take time until you will create all of these methods, but eventually, because of that, it will make much easier for you later to create test cases. Make sense, guys?
Quick question. Can you repeat again? What is the disadvantages of doing this?
Oh yeah, you mean this method?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that bothers me, like that I need to pass CSS locator, right? And for the end user, that doesn't, I mean, this may be like still a little bit complicated. I mean, that's like a small disadvantage of I can see it. It's like flexible, but we need to pass CSS selector, and CSS selector, it doesn't have to, like, it doesn't, I mean, it's kind of like a details, right? That we don't really need to know. Here, let's say for the password and emails, it makes sense because we are passing this data based off our testing logic, right? Because we are testing empty email and not empty password. But here, I would say, I would.
So, sorry to interrupt you. So you mean like you want to create a constant to storage the sex selector?
Yes, it's gonna be like one approach, and second approach, we can just create two different methods for two different type of errors, right? Because first type of error, it's coming from, so this error is from front end, right? So here front end tell us, okay, email is required. And this one, again, this is a front end, right? It's showing me the error even before I submitted my data. This type of error is actually from the backend. So you see, it's actually making a call to the backend, and it returns the message. So what I would do, I would probably create, I don't know, two different methods for for the front-end errors and from the backend errors, because it will make it easier from a human readability perspective. I mean, again, it's not like 100% right solution, but that's what I would do. But you can also do that this way, just like using creating one generic get error text message and just passing the CSS selector.
Okay.
But yeah, good question. All right, guys. Any more questions to me? Okay, no questions. Okay, perfect, guys. So on a Tuesday and Thursday, we're gonna cover more things that you can do with TestNG. On the Tuesday, we're gonna talk more about the TestNG XML file, how we can configure it, how we can pass parameters. On the Thursday, we're gonna talk more about the BDD approach that TestNG allow us. And your homework gonna be pretty much for today. You will need to create a test case using the find elements. And then you will need to create TestNG XML files. This we're gonna show you on Tuesday. And on the Thursday, you will need to actually refactor your login page, login test to use a BDD approach. So it's gonna be a lot of cool stuff and cool refactoring work that you will need to do. All right, guys, so that's pretty much it that I want to show you today. I'm gonna push these changes to my GitHub account, and I'm gonna send you my link from all the code that we did today. So you can use it as a reference once you will do your homework. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for today. Do you guys have any questions? All right. If you guys don't have any questions, I hope it's all clear for you and you're good to go. All right, guys. So that's it for today. Have fun refactoring your test cases that you already did. If you didn't create your test cases, then first of all, create it in as we showed you like last Saturday, and then refactor it. So it will help you to understand how it all works. All right, guys. Thank you so much and have a good weekend and have fun doing your homework.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.